Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 4 of the Toddler Play Conference. Actually, we're on the 4th annual Toddler Play Conference and we are on day 4. So it's really nice when these numbers all line up. Thank you for being with us here on the live. I'm joined today with Nicole from Delightful Dreamers, who is one of our speakers for today. So if you're here and you see us and you hear us, can you give us a thumbs up or come and say hi in the comment box? And Nicole, before we kind of get into some of the admin and all of the nitty gritty of today, do you want to tell everyone a little bit more about who you are and what you do, if they haven't listened to your talk yet?
Yes. So I am a certified pediatric sleep consultant, and I work with families with young children to help get better sleep. And I take a holistic approach to sleep, and I use gentle and responsive strategies. So I like to look at the big picture when we are looking at sleep issues. And before becoming a sleep consultant, I worked in early intervention as a social worker for 10 years. So I have that child development background that I bring into my work as well.
I love that. I really appreciate your like general approach to sleep, because I feel like it's one of these areas that it can be like really like a heated kind of debates around different kind of techniques. And I think you bring a very like holistic, grounded, like real parenting approach into the conversation, which I find really refreshing and also super practical to use. So I'm so glad to have you here with us.
Thank you.
So we have a comment here from Nicole Radman. She says, the talk I'm most looking forward to the most today, and she hasn't watched it yet, is your talk about naps. I've had a few people that are like, naps, hallelujah, that's what we needed. So yeah, definitely Nicole's talk today is all about dropping naps and having quiet time instead. So definitely make sure that you go check that out. We also have a great lineup today. We have, I'm going to forget all of the names, like I always do this, but we have, somebody's going to have to remind me, you know what, no, I'm going to flick over to my notes quickly so I have it like in front of me. Sorry, guys. It's best when I actually print this out. All the names become jumbled. So we have Nicole today. We have the story time with K Ready Through Play with Rebecca and Sarah, which is really fun. That is actually one that if you're listening with your kids, you can kind of bring them along because they do like a story time and some beautiful spring inspired books. We have a STEM play invitation workshop by Michelle King from Taming Little Monsters, which is also super fun. Ali Tickton also shares about sensory play. Heather Sossaman is a physiotherapist who also spoke about like some of the movement aspects and motor development, which was really fascinating talk. And also Aline Villaneda, who is talking about reflex integration. So it's a full day. What I like about each of the days actually of the conference is that because our audience is so mixed, we have parents, therapists, educators, there's a bit of different topics for different professions and listening. All right, that's so nice to hear, DKSLP, that story time was fun. Yeah, I loved it. I love those books that they brought. So we are going to get into, I think, the question part. I just want to remind you before we get there that you have a bingo card. If you haven't downloaded it yet, go and download it. Today is the last day, day 4, that we're going to be using the bingo card. And if you're here with us live, you can tick off that bingo card. Make sure you come and comment. It's always nice to see all of you guys here. So you can tick that off on your bingo card. It is clickable, so the links can be clicked as well as the actual like tick box. You don't need to print it. And then you come and submit that in the Facebook thread and you get your name in the hat for today's prize. We are giving 3 of you a VIP ticket. So you can walk away with that. If you already have the VIP ticket, we'll swap it out for another type of digital product. And yes, I think that's the main kind of admin of today. Tomorrow, our prize will be based off of participation within the Facebook group. I love seeing you guys interacting. It's just really fun, and you all do just such amazing encouragement, and like you bring thought-provoking questions and topics, and I just love it. It's great to get to know you there. So we give a prize for the person that seems to have like shown up the most, which is actually going to be really hard to decide this year. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into some questions. So I've got this up here. If you have a question, if you have something specific that you want to talk through, pop it in the chat bot and we will try and get to that as well. One of the questions that did come up was in the Facebook group. So Nicole, I think we'll get started with that one. And it was from, I think, a grandmother, and she was saying that her 1-year-old grandchild doesn't want to nap anymore. So what are your thoughts around that?
So that is hard. And I know around the age of 1, there's a lot happening right throughout all the toddler years and infancy. There's so much happening developmentally. So a lot of times with developmental progressions, I'll see it impacts sleep, and sometimes our little ones will refuse their naps. So at 1, it's still very early to be dropping a nap. So I would encourage continuing to offer the nap. And I would look at, as I talked about, like all areas of sleep hygiene, and really think about like, what is the sleep schedule around a year. I'll still see 2 naps a day. Some babies will be doing 1 nap a day. But I would look at the sleep schedule to look at the timing of when the naps are taking place. And I know in the guide that I shared, I included a little table with some information on like the awake windows that are suggested. So kind of looking at those can be a good place to start. And then also, just like the sleep environment and making sure you have a nap routine in place so that this child is getting ready for that transition.
Absolutely. Those are all such good points. And if any of the things that Nicole just said, like in terms of sleep hygiene or anything like that, she does go over that in her talk. So make sure to also listen to that, because it is really thorough and like walks through the process of naps and ages and things. One of the questions that I would imagine that the person that posted might have is in terms of different environments. Like often we have our kids that are either in like a daycare or a play group or going to a grandparent's house. And sometimes it's not always that they're going like the whole week, that they're going maybe once or twice a week. So it's like that change in kind of the sleeping place and the schedule and things like that. How do you work around that in terms of getting them to sleep in a familiar but not completely regular place?
Right. So I find that our kids are, adaptable, and they can adjust to having different sleep spaces, different expectations with so many things, not just sleep, but like the difference between childcare and at home. But when there is the option, I do suggest trying to recreate that sleep environment that the child's used to at home, wherever they are. So like at the grandparents' house, if they are napping in a dark room at home, if they can have that at the grandparents' house as well. Or, if you're using a sound machine, to have one wherever they are napping as well.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, and then having a similar sleep routine, so like the bedtime routine, nap routine, if that can be similar to what the child's regularly used to as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are really like helpful things that sometimes we kind of forget. I mean, there's so many things. I know when you're like packing the diaper bag, if your child is going out of the house for the day or whatever, there's like 1,000 things that you need to pack in there. So it can be so easy to also forget, like to kind of do that consideration around sleep.
Yeah.
I think we'll talk about this a little bit more, but I did just want to remind everyone that's here, if you have any questions or anything like that, just pop them into the comment box and we'll get to them. I do see a comment here from Shauna. She says, I loved your talk. I struggled with quiet time with my eldest because of his anxiety. Finally got into a rhythm, and then he was in kinder and it naturally dropped away. I get to try again with my 2.5-year-old eventually with the new ideas from you. So that's such a good point. I was wondering with that question, is there anything that you would say in terms of like that anxiety piece? I know like each child's temperament is so different. Is there something specific that you generally help if you feel like the reason that the child is struggling is anxiety?
So not specifically, but something that I'm just thinking of is just really taking it slow and giving them as much support as they need. So I know like we talked about this in the talk as well. but just sometimes staying in the room with them to give them that support, letting them know that you're there and checking in frequently can be helpful.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Okay, there's some more questions that have come in, so I'll read them out to you. My son dropped his nap at 3, but he'll fall asleep in the car in the afternoon. We just started quiet time this week, but so far he just plays. How do I encourage him to choose sleep if he needs? And then there's a second part to this question, or will quiet time help him not be so difficult after 4 p.m.?
Yes, that time of day is so hard once they've dropped that nap. So it's very common to fall asleep in the car with that motion in the afternoon. I think where you've just started the quiet time this week, to give it time, it's tricky. We can't force them to sleep just offering it. I think something you could do to encourage it. I don't know if he is in a bed or in a crib, and where he's having his quiet time, but if he could have his quiet time where he sleeps. So if he's in a bed, having some soft toys or books to look at while he's in the bed, that can be helpful to encourage that sleep to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know Nicole because she's also in my Playful Pod membership, and
Okay.
he's in a bed.
Okay.
That I think it's like a new thing. Yeah, quiet time in his room with his bed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So having
awesome.
it right there in the bed, is what I would suggest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. I think also, I don't know, my experience as well is like sometimes it takes time for that process of them feeling comfortable with this new idea of quiet time. And then once they get a little bit more comfortable, they also are a little bit more open to the possibility of like resting their head for a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. Right. If they're uncomfortable or feeling like anxious or stressed about it, that makes it harder to fall asleep. So feeling that calm comfort will help.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think in terms of the second part of this question? Will quiet time help him not be so difficult after 4 p.m.?
So I don't know if quiet time in itself will help with that. If he's falling asleep, that will help. One thing I would think about is, if you haven't already, is to try maybe a slightly earlier bedtime, just to make sure that he's getting the total amount of sleep that he needs in that 24-hour period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great idea. Okay, there's another question that I'll move on to. And again, guys, if you have any questions, this is your time. So come drop them in here. It is from Elizabeth, and she says, if a nap is usually long at home, but will be short in nursery school, should we limit naps at home?
Okay, that's a great question, and something that comes up often. I'll see sleep schedules be different at nursery versus at home, and like we were saying earlier, kids can be really adaptable. So I wouldn't necessarily limit the naps at home. If anything, again, like those nursery days where the nap is shorter, you might want to consider an earlier bedtime, if that's something that you're able to do. But I don't think that there would be any reason to limit it at home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I suppose like some of the, I know like with my kids, I also kind of went through this processing of, what's okay, what should we do and what shouldn't we do. And one of the things is like, I think that sometimes we get taught, especially around sleep, about routine a lot. Routine. And
Yes.
obviously it is such a big component. But sometimes there's like also the ability to be a little bit flexible within routines. Like I know for us, we always nap on Saturdays. It's like it's a family thing, and the kids don't necessarily always do it. But like even though they don't normally nap, this is nap time, right? It doesn't necessarily like throw out the whole week. It's just
Yeah.
something that we need as the
Yes.
parents.
I think, that flexibility is really helpful to have. And something I always talk about is the 80-20 rule. So it's where like 80% of the time we're sticking to that routine, sticking to sleep schedules, and then 20% of the time being a little more flexible with that. It's not going to ruin things, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. I love that rule. It's one of those things that can be applied to like so many parts of childhood, the 80-20 rule. So I'm going to just scroll through here and see if there's any more questions. If you guys come in and you do have any questions, okay, I do see one here. Do you suggest getting rid of toys and just doing books in the room so that they do not play?
So,
I'm guessing that this is during quiet time.
yeah, I mean, I think it would depend. Um, I think during quiet time, toys can be fine to have. And one thing I do talk about, like in general, is we do want to try to keep the bedroom low stimulation. So, like if there is sleep struggles, hard time falling asleep in general, keeping the room lower stimulation, and when possible, keeping it more for sleep. It's kind of the same idea where it's like we shouldn't be like working in our bedrooms. It helps build that sleep association. But with quiet time, I think having some toys available is totally fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think also in the talk you did talk about like the types of toys that might, I think you said like, sometimes having like a special basket or toys that aren't normally on offer or something like that. And then I would just presume like not the toys that make tons of noise or
Right.
like the more quiet playing kind of things.
Yeah. I love like puzzles, stuffed animals, little figurines, things that, like I was saying, could be used in their sleep space. So obviously, like they need to be safe to have them with them in their bed as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's some toys that like they don't technically make a noise, but actually when you start playing with them, they make a ton of noise, like Lego. This we know from experience.
Yeah.
Okay, so Nicole just replied to what you'd said, and she said, "Thank you. Bedtime has bumped to earlier once naps dropped, which we loved, but he fights to start bedtime even earlier than that."
Right. Yeah. So if it's too early, that can be an issue. So I think, giving it some time to adjust, and then just looking at, like I was saying, all of the sleep hygiene things. So like light exposure, screen time, getting lots of activity in, that can all just support that sleep. So I know it can be a really tricky phase while they're dropping naps and adjusting to being awake for such a long period. The afternoons can be harder. So something I do find helpful too is just like, as much as possible, keeping it like simple, low pressure afternoons, not putting too high of expectations, if possible, like avoiding going out to activities if that's something that becomes stressful, right? Like just trying to keep it as low stress as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing like trying to transition out of the house with a like overtired toddler. It's really tough.
Yeah.
Okay, so then a comment came in just in response to what we talked about in terms of the toys being in the room, and she says, "I took the toys out and she got better, like it was the problem with her not napping. I took them out and then she started napping." So I think she associated her room with play instead of napping. Yeah, I think like just to echo what you've also been saying is that kids are kind of individual. So, as parents, like you have all of this time that you're observing them and understanding them. So if you feel like to try something, I would say go ahead and try it. And
Absolutely.
see if it works. I did want to just bring up another question. It's not here, but it is my own question in terms of we spoke about the like daycare naps being shorter. So what do you do if the daycare or the preschool doesn't really encourage naps? Like sometimes our kids kind of enter these frameworks when they're a little bit younger than the group. And then they might be napping, but then the rest of the group isn't. So how would you generally say to navigate that as the daycare and also as the parents?
Yes, right. It's tricky. So, and I know sometimes there are certain guidelines where things can't be changed. But if, having that conversation to see if there is an option to have some quiet time or the option to have a nap offered can be a place to start. And at home, outside of that, like I had said earlier, sometimes just having an earlier bedtime when possible. I know it's often hard too, depending on what time you're getting home from daycare. And then on the weekends, still continuing to offer the nap so that they can get that little bit of extra sleep over the weekends.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also great to always remember, like in terms of on the side of the parents, that you can communicate these things, because every child is so different. So, like within the preschool or daycare setting, it might not, what seems maybe obvious to you might not actually be obvious to them. So if there's ways that we can support, then it's great to just have like open lines of communication with that.
Yeah.
I used to work with a little boy, and I've like never seen this happen in my whole life. He would fall asleep standing. Like when it got to a certain point in the day, he was just so tired. So we always and we didn't quite understand this because it was like until a point, because he was falling asleep also in the cars. So then he would end up going to bed late, and like his whole schedule was upside down until the parents came forward and started talking about it. And then we could all work around what to do to help him, but he would we had to make sure he had his lunch earlier because he would fall asleep at the table. So cute. I always I wish I could fall asleep like that. I wish that it was that simple. Okay, there's another part of the question here. I also noticed right before her sister came, so I presume that means being born, she would struggle to not nap at all. And then when the baby came, she didn't. But when the baby was 2 months old, she started napping again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think our kids, they know what's going on, and these big transitions in life can affect them. So that's great. She started napping again. I think I always encourage with transitions like this, just having some extra one-on-one time when possible that can really support any separation anxiety that's happening around the changes as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she says, I think it was her knowing that the change was coming.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that we will probably leave it at that for today, unless there's anybody that has any last questions. I'm going to just pop over and tell you about what's coming up tomorrow. So tomorrow we have a talk by Emily Kukla about supporting speech and language through home programs. If you are a therapist, you have to watch the talk. It's so interesting. We have a great workshop by Emily Lawson about learning numbers through play. Really fun one as well. And we have some great physios tomorrow too. We have Chanda, who is talking about indoor purposeful motor play, and also Stacey Menz, who is talking about play for endurance. And we have a talk by Sarah Britton, which is all about setting up a playroom. So she walks you through 7 steps to setting up a playroom, which was really interesting to have that process kind of broken down for us. And yeah, that's what we have coming up tomorrow. We also have the prize of giving away 3 months within my membership community, Playful Pod, and all of the fun that is happening inside of the conference. So keep interacting and keep learning. I am so inspired by all of you, how really motivated you are and how diligent you are in watching all of these videos and learning so much. And so just keep it up. Nicole, if anybody that is here hasn't seen your talk yet and they want to see more about the work that you do and everything, do you want to tell them a bit about that?
Yes. So in the talk, I go over all about signs to know that it's ready, time to drop a nap for your child, and how to support them with making that transition. And on the VIP ticket, we talk more about introducing quiet time and how to support your child with that quiet time.
Yeah, amazing. And if anyone wants to check out your website and the programs that you offer, do you want to tell them where they would find you?
Yes. So I am on all social media, Facebook and Instagram at Delightful Dreamers LLC. And, if anyone has questions that are coming up afterwards, I do a question and answer in my stories every Monday. So you can always check that out. And then my website is www.delightfuldreamers.com. And I also do offer free discovery calls. So if you have questions about working together, not sure if what you're dealing with would warrant getting support, those calls are available so that we can talk through that.
Amazing. So definitely go and listen to Nicole's talk as well. And you can find all of her links also within her talk there. So thank you everyone for being with us. You guys are all amazing. I hope that you guys have some really good naps, long naps this week and this weekend. Thanks, Nicole, for being with us. We'll see you all in the group. Bye.